I'm joined now by NBC News Justice and Intelligence Correspondent Ken Dilanian. Also with me is NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Peter Alexander and NBC News tech reporter David Ingram. Thanks to all of you for starting us off today. Ken, let me start with you and this decision by a federal judge in Boston to pause the buyout plan this afternoon until Monday. What can you tell us? What happens next?
Well, Kristen, it's sort of a technical decision. He's doing it in order to allow both sides to marshal their arguments for a later hearing. So he didn't decide it on the merits, but it nonetheless does put a pause on a program that a lot of people have questions about. And this came after a lawsuit by Federal Employee Union, which is essentially saying, look, this thing is illegal. It's not supported in law. And there are also questions about whether the money can be paid, for example, if there's a government shutdown. And so you've had, by some reports, as many as 60,000 federal employees who have signed up for this. But that's actually a tiny percentage of the entire federal workforce. The people I'm talking to, for example, inside the FBI and the Justice Department, are very, very reluctant to raise their hand for this. And they worry that once you do raise your hand, even if it doesn't go through, you've sort of announced to the Trump administration that you no longer want to work here. And that's not a great thing. So a lot of trepidation about this, Kristen.
Well, and Ken, just to follow up on that point, what exactly does it mean for the deadline? Could the government accept resignations that come in after today?
Well, it's on pause until Monday. So it's unclear whether their acceptance means anything. What the judge has ruled is that this program must halt until Monday, until further notice, Kristen.
And of course, employees, contractors for USAID are considering potential lawsuits over President Trump's dismantling of the agency. What are you hearing about that?
Yeah, that's right. A lot of people don't realize that USAID's programs are mainly implemented by contractors, including some really big companies here inside the Beltway that employ thousands of people. And those companies have huge payrolls, and they're owed millions, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars by the federal government right now. And one official at one of those companies told me he's keeping all his people in place overseas because he doesn't want to breach his contracts, but he's about to run out of money. He's got to meet payroll. So there is a plan to go into court to try to force the government to live up to its obligations under its contracts. Now, that's a different argument than whether Donald Trump has the power and the authority to shut down a federal agency created by Congress. This is really an issue of contract law. You got some really big companies and some powerful lawyers poised to take on the federal government, Kristen.
And as you say, a lot of trepidation as this all unfolds. Peter, let me head over to you at the White House. I know you've been talking to your sources there. What are they telling you? What is the reaction to this judge's decision to halt the buyout offer?
Well, as far as the White House views it right now, Kristen, this does give them a longer window to help sort of tee up these buyouts for as many of the federal employees as they can get to take them at this point. Recognize that 2.6% or so of the 2.3 million members of the civilian workforce have accepted it. They said the goal was roughly 5 to 10%. The deadline was tonight. So if they want to meet that goal, now they may have a bit more time. That's the way they're framing it. And this is from the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, with whom I spoke a short time ago. She provided me the following statement that says, in part, "We are grateful to the judge for extending the deadline so more federal workers who refuse to show up to the office can take the administration up on this very generous once-in-a-lifetime offer." Has the sort of marketing language that Donald Trump has prized and has used over the course of his years in real estate. Nonetheless, that's the way they're viewing it at this time, with Monday is the date many are circling on the calendar to see, in fact, how the judge does decide to rule as it relates to the implementation of this buyout offer. Kristen.
And Peter, we're talking about the fact that the judge halted the buyout offer. There has been this backlash, but President Trump's been defiant. His argument is, this is what I campaigned on. Caroline Leavitt said he campaigned with Elon Musk. No one should be surprised by this. Talk a little bit about the messaging that we're hearing from the president himself.
Well, the bottom line is we've heard from the president now repeatedly say this was a campaign pledge. He says that he is here on a mandate in spite of the fact that the country is basically evenly divided, despite the Electoral College being a large win for Donald Trump this go-around. And in his view, this is part of the campaign pledge to slash what he describes as the bloated federal bureaucracy. We've heard that language from him repeatedly, heard the same from Caroline Leavitt as she was speaking to us over the course of this day. She made clear that the president's desire is to try to run the country like a profitable business. But as I've been speaking to federal workers, those at USAID, contractors associated with it, and elsewhere, they say while most agree that reform is needed across federal government, there's one way to do it with a scalpel, but in their view, the president is doing with a sledgehammer, with a bludgeon right now, and they think at the end of the day that that's not the way it should be done, and frankly, they worry that this could impact America's national security, Kristen.
A really critical question there, Peter, and there's been so much focus on President Trump's relationship with Elon Musk. Will it continue to go strong? Right now, the president seems to be standing by him. What are you hearing about the state of their relationship?
Well, you played the clip from earlier this morning, so that's the most up-to-date word that we have from the president himself, praising Elon Musk, saying that he's good, that he has done a good job to this point. Effectively saying that he and his team, which the Democrats have described as unelected minions, himself included, basically the Democrats say it's an out-of-control power grab at this point right now. But Trump seems to think that Elon Musk is doing exactly what he wants him to be doing. He's had praise, Musk has, from Speaker Johnson as well as others. And at this point, it appears that he has no plans to change that. And remember, he is a special government employee, so don't expect him to go anywhere anytime soon. That gives him 130 days to work. And it's not just total days, it's total hours. So that could extend for quite some time.
A really fascinating point there, Peter, to end on. David, let me turn over to you, delve into the legality of some of this a little bit more. You've been reporting that employees at the Department of Education who take the buyout offer could actually stop being paid at any time without any legal recourse. What more do you know about this?
So I've been speaking with federal employees around the government, including in the Department of Education, and they are scratching their heads, reading through the fine print and trying their best to figure out what exactly this deal means. There's been nothing like it that they've seen in their years at the federal government. Of course, some of the people that we're speaking with have been at the federal government for years. They're used to how things work and used to, in some cases, reading legal contracts that they have with the government. And they are trying to determine what leverage they could possibly have, or what assurance they could possibly get to know that the government will live up to its end of the bargain here. So they are quizzing their managers in seems like daily conversations. There was a large call yesterday at the Department of Education where people we spoke to said that there was a lot of anger and frustration on the call, that management could not reassure them that the government would hold up its end of the deal if they raised their hand, and in fact said the opposite, that these could be revoked later on.
So, David, it's so interesting because the number of people who've agreed to take the buyout is still far fewer than the White House is targeting. How is this wrinkle that you just lay out affecting how many people actually say yes to this buyout?
Well, the people I've spoken with were probably skeptical to begin with at taking an offer like this, given that there's really no precedent for it and the questionable legality that Congress has not explicitly approved this. But this extra wrinkle of, well, maybe if I put my hand up and accept this, the government will still fire me, still not pay me for the next several months. That, I think, is giving people even extra pause and causing them to rule out the idea of taking it.
David, you just heard my conversation with Peter about the relationship between President Trump and Elon Musk. I know you've been covering Elon Musk for quite a while now. So far, what are your key takeaways about how he is going about this overhaul of government?
One thing that Elon Musk has succeeded in doing for years now, well before the election, is finding ways to escape accountability, whether it's in the courts or with shareholders or a political accountability. So these court rulings this past week to slow down changes at the government certainly pose a real problem for him and could be the first way that he is held accountable. But he is very skilled. He has at avoiding this level of accountability over the years. He has teams of lawyers behind him, and he has an enormous public megaphone to argue his case to the public. So beyond the courts and Congress, it's going to require, I think, public sentiment to be able to rein him in if he's going to be.
Well, it's just going to be a fascinating relationship to watch. Ken, Peter, and David, thank you for starting us off on this story that impacts so many people. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.